Welcome back to Our Issues Milwaukee. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. Many kids in Milwaukee and surrounding areas will be returning to school on Tuesday, September 2nd. My next guest is Rahim Islam, who's the president and CEO of Universal Companies, the nonprofit community development and education management corporation formed under the direction of music mogul and rock and roll Hall of Famer behind the sounds of Philadelphia, Mr. Kenny Gamble. It's a pleasure to have you here, Rahim. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Well, it's exciting for a lot of people to get their kids back to school, get educated, and you are here to talk about your schools. Universal Companies has brought to Milwaukee, and it is the Universal Academy for the College Bound. So let's talk about those schools. Last year was your first year bringing the Universal Academy into existence. What are your goals for this school year?
Well, one of the things that we're looking at this year is to kind of expand the program. Our first year was a lot of tests that we had in our first year. Some things we expected, some things we didn't expect. But this year coming in, we think we're going to have a full complement of 825 students. That was one. We had a transportation issue last year that we didn't anticipate, but we kind of ironed those kinks out. We have a full complement in both schools. We have two campuses, one the old Green Bay campus on 8th Street, and then the other in Webster, the old Webster campus. In the Webster campus, we have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, so we grow up a grade this year from 7th grade to 8th grade. Okay. So we expect to have more programs for those older students, preparing them ready for high school. That's what we're intending to do this year. Increasing the arts program, the music program, the extracurricular activity, but most importantly, preparing them for the next step, which is going to be high school.
And I did mention that Kenny Gamble, so for those people who are lovers of R&B old school music, they are very familiar with Mr. Gamble,
right.
But he actually came up with this concept in Philadelphia, and you've taken the blueprint from schools in Philly,
right.
Brought them to Milwaukee. You too are residents of Philadelphia,
right.
So you just spend a lot of time here in Milwaukee lately,
well, I'm like
right?
a resident of Milwaukee too now. But I think the blueprint is fundamentally that education is key to rebuilding our neighborhoods, for restabilizing our communities, both short-term and long-term. So the model is basically, the universal model is, how do we rebuild the African-American community? How do we stabilize that community? We have to do two things. One, we have to deal with the issues at hand that many of the adults are dealing with now. Economic, long-term academic failures, and also economic issues that we're facing today, right. Unemployment issues, but also the kind of school to prison pipeline has to be interrupted. And so we deal with the structural issues, economic issues, but also we got to deal with some of the issues that started this process, and that's dealing with the education. So education for us is a stabilizing force for rebuilding neighborhoods, and that's how we approach it. That's the model we're using. That's the model we came up with in Philadelphia. That's the model we're using here in Milwaukee. We haven't gotten to the actual neighborhood planning, community organizing yet, but this year coming up, we're going to try to deal with some health issues. We're going to try to now get more involved in the community. We're going to look at around both of the schools some of the community development opportunities, and those are the kind of things we're going to gradually grow in the scale as part of the plan.
Yes. Now, and you do focus on the arts and academic achievement at UACB, but you, just as you said, you're well aware of all of the things that kind of play a role in some urban areas in making it hard for both parents and students sometimes to get past the things that are considered issues
right.
in everyday life, to forget those things and be able to focus on education. So you are aware of the academic achievement gap that many children who live in urban areas face off the bat. How do you, in fact, go about closing that gap?
Well, one of the things is, one, do what we can do in the school during the hours we spend in the school. So making sure our staff are doing a good job. We call block and tackling, making sure that the reading, writing, arithmetic is sound. Another big component of it has to be integrated into the educational program is a strong dose of education about who those children are, who we are in this country as African Americans, predominantly black people in America, our history in this country, and our history period, and who we are, and also the role that we can play going forward. That has to be part of the education. But also dealing with the issues that face our parents, recognizing that our parents are struggling, and many of them are single parents, head of household, trying to raise children by themselves. So dealing with quality housing and also looking at economic opportunities to create job opportunities is really important. But most importantly, just having a compassion and an appreciation and value in that parent in the role that they're playing, even in spite of their challenges. That's something that's fundamentally that we've created in the culture of our universal schools. So some of the things we look at in our first year, did we achieve those? No, but we're moving towards that objective, having a family and student resource center, helping our parents. We have issues that, that really many people don't talk about. A lot of homeless children, even though they're living in homes, they technically they're homeless because they don't have permanent housing, or the housing is not quality housing, and so there are a lot of issues they're dealing with. They come to school hungry, making sure that the food program that we have is really good. Their breakfast, lunch, and snacks in the afternoon. So all those things are taking place. We're trying to make sure that they're right and they're good. In addition, making sure that the school becomes a hub for neighborhood transformation. So the school is known for the place where you can go to the school where things are happening. This is part of where the solutions are taking place. Not just that you're educating our children, but that activity is happening. Parents know that things are happening for children, not only for the children that go to school, but the children that live in the neighborhood. Things are happening for the parents as well.
Yes, and I will mention again, you have the two campuses, one on North 8th Street for K4 through 5th grade.
I'm glad you said that because I keep forgetting the addresses.
Well, we know that you live in Philadelphia full time, so there's also North 53rd Street, and that's the 6th through 8th grade.
Right.
Okay, so with that said, the gap between black children and other races, it continues to widen at all levels of education. And the interesting thing is that Wisconsin has been ranked the worst state in the country when it comes to racial disparity in children. So what are your thoughts when you hear that?
Well, I'm pretty much in Philadelphia. We've seen this story is old. They really start to kind of be a competition. Who's the worst? And really, when you see this kind of disparities of education disparities, economic disparities, health disparities, all targeted at one population, it's not pretty. It's some real serious structural issues taking place, and really they manifest in the demise of the black family. So when you see, many families or communities where you have this alarming number of single parents, head of households, well, you're going to have these kind of multiple issues taking place. So I think that the statistics that you run out about what's happening in Milwaukee are consistent with the universal plan. Our approach is to attack it straight, using education as a core vehicle to deal with it both today and tomorrow. The only way, well, not the only way, but one of the best ways to deal with the issue of ignorance and poverty and the conditions of poverty is to educate our children.
Absolutely.
But educate them not only to be able to be competitive about reading, writing, and arithmetic, but educate them about being competitive as human beings. Because there's too many images, too much negative and stereotypes that they're getting on a daily basis, coupled with what they see in their homes, coupled with what they see in their communities, that kind of validate an opinion about inferiority. We have to counter that. So I think the issue that we have here in Milwaukee and the statistics you see in Milwaukee, I think there's pretty much statistics all around the country when you have a majority African American people. It just so happens that Milwaukee is leading, the country. But I think that we can make a difference with our schools. I think we can make a difference with our plan.
Yeah, and something you said that I think is very important is that the schools are acting as sort of like a nucleus or a hub in the neighborhood to help make change, because stats also show that nearly 85% of all violent crimes take place in neighborhoods where schools are also woefully underperforming.
Right.
So if you can change the scope of what your school is putting out, then hopefully that can also change the scope of what's going on in the
Without question,
neighborhood.
there's definitely a correlation to failing schools and failing neighborhoods. I mean, failing communities. It's a correlation. They all go hand in hand. I think, again, somebody has to say, and the good news is that in spite of all these negative statistics, that doesn't represent the majority of the people. I think I call it a really vocal minority. That kind of is leading the way. What we have to do is aggregate that solid majority of people who want to do right, who feel good about themselves, but they just don't feel like they can make a difference. The school becomes a hub for that. And again, it's not just for the children who go to the school, it's for the children who live in the neighborhood. Making sure that those buildings are open for after-school activity, making sure there's after-school activity taking place, making sure the recreation is there for the school, just having shows at the school, having events at the school, coming to the school and getting food. I mean, getting information about education, about health, getting information about job opportunities. You name it. There's so many different things that school can play a role in dealing with these issues, but we really have to fundamentally challenge the idea that the majority of the community is in this condition. It's really not the majority of the community. Even though they're struggling, most of the people want to do good, feel good about themselves, but we just got to aggregate that capacity.
Yes, and as we wrap up, I mean, I'm sure there are people at home watching. I've established the fact that you are from Philadelphia, and this whole concept comes out of what has been done in Philly under the direction of Mr. Kenny Gamble. Why Milwaukee? Out of all the places in America, why did you choose Milwaukee to bring your school and take us in as, you know, a place where you too can make a difference?
Well, first and foremost, we were invited. I mean, Dr. Greg Thornton knew of what we were doing and thought we could be a solution in Milwaukee. But the other thing, I think that what we see in Milwaukee, when I started to kind of make a determination, do we invest in Milwaukee? And I seen many of the conditions in Milwaukee that were like Philadelphia. So we have, statistically, we're probably in the same place, and some of the characteristics are the same. But what I also saw in Milwaukee, or see in Milwaukee, is this passion. Now, in Milwaukee, people are down on Milwaukee. They really saying that, you know, no, not in Milwaukee, you can't do it in Milwaukee. But what I see in Milwaukee is a ton of black pride. And I think that's what really I thought that we could hang our hats on and we could build off of. And that's, I believe that ingredient will make us successful.
Well, thank you so much for coming by and sharing your thoughts with us today. Rahim Islam is the president and CEO of Universal Companies. And to learn more about Universal Companies and the Universal Academy for the College Bound's Pursuit for Excellence, you can visit their website at uacb.org. That's going to do it for today's show. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. Thank you for watching, and I do hope you join us again next week as we take another look at our issues in Milwaukee. Have a great day.